How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. I'm a musician, producer, Ableton certified trainer, and podcast host. And this show is the show about all things making music. We talk about gear, philosophy, the creative process, workflow, all kinds of stuff, even if it's loosely related to making music. Usually I have a guest on the show, and sometimes I talk just by myself with some things that I've been thinking about. And today's episode is going to be one of those types of episodes. It has to do with a quote from Henry Ford. And the quote is, "Whether you think you can or can't, you're right. Whether you think you can or can't, you're right." This might sound a little paradoxical at first. How can you be right if you think you can and if you think you can? And this is a mindset type of thing. It has to do with what you believe. You can accomplish what you believe you can accomplish. It applies to us in music production quite a lot. If we don't think we're going to be able to accomplish things, finish songs, move forward with our careers, then we're not going to, because we're not going to do the things that need to be done in order to do that. And on the other end, if we believe we can do it, then we're going to act like a person that can do those things. We're going to try, we're going to put our efforts forward. And even if we fail, we're just going to say to ourselves, well, that's not going to work. We'll have to just figure out another way to do this because this is something we can do. It's a very powerful thing to keep in mind and pay attention to when you are kind of telling yourself what you're capable of doing and setting up your own personal boundaries and limitations. Everything that happens to us gets filtered through our own minds. And the way we think about things colors how we see everything. It changes our perception. So if we have this idea that we can do things, we won't see potential problems as deal breakers and things that will prevent us from doing it. We just see them as obstacles we have to get around. I have a couple quick stories that I think kind of illustrate this, that kind of show just how powerful our minds can be. And one of them has to do with dogs and dog shock collars. So these are the collars you put on a dog. And usually there's like some kind of underground fence. It's like a wire you put underground. And when the dog gets close enough to the fence, the collar beeps. And if they get even closer, they'll eventually get a little shock. And once the dog gets the shock, they jump back and they associate the beeping of the collar with the shock. So whenever they hear the beeping, they tend to move back. I don't do this to my dogs, but it's interesting that you really only need to set this up for a very short amount of time. Sometimes once is enough. The dog hears the beeping, gets the shock, and then is basically scared from moving past that point, and they eventually learn the boundaries of, say, your backyard or whatever it might be. But the funny thing is, after a short amount of time, you can just take the collar off the dog. And the dog just knows that they can't go past this certain point. They have it in their head that that's something they can't do, so they never try. And that's pretty much how it works for us. I'll tell you another example that I came across recently. At work, they gave everybody laptop computers to use. And some of the people are really excited, of course. You know, it's great. It's a cool thing we get them. But there are the people that want to just keep doing things the way they've always done it. They don't want to move towards a computer. The technology frightens them. And they think that they're not a tech savvy person. You hear that a lot. I'm not tech savvy. One colleague of mine got his computer and was looking at the box and handed it over to another colleague and said, can you just open this for me? I can't even figure this thing out. And it was a regular box. I think if there were a pair of shoes inside or a sandwich or something that they were a little more familiar with, they would have been able to open the box easily. There was nothing special about this box. But because it was the technology and because the mindset was, I can't do this, he was unable to open the box without help. And it was kind of funny to watch the other colleague just open the box and the guy kind of laugh. But it was another example of this mindset thing where we think we can't do something, we think it's too hard for us, and that we don't even try. But all things that are difficult eventually get easier with more effort. I'm sure you've seen that in your own music production. If you're doubting it, go back to some of your earlier projects and compare it to what you're doing now. I'm sure there's growth. on some level, you've definitely improved. It's like we're always wearing a pair of sunglasses over our eyes and they're tinted a certain color. And we see the world through that tint. Everything gets processed through our mind. I used to have this mug that I would drink tea out of. This is before I ever drank coffee. And I always hated when somebody put coffee in this mug because the coffee smell just kind of always lingered inside the mug. And no matter what I poured into it, it tasted and smelled like coffee. That's kind of how our minds work. Whatever beliefs we have are sort of like that coffee, and any input we receive, any feedback we get, is always sort of tainted by that smell of the coffee or that belief we have. If it's that we think we can't do something, a failure is just evidence of that and reason why you should stop trying. If you believe you can, a failure is just an opportunity to grow. It's just a little feedback and it's time to make an adjustment. So try to keep this in mind when you're making your music, when you're producing, and I guess in general. What are you telling yourself? What limitations and beliefs are you putting in your head that everything that happens to you is getting filtered through? Because whether you think you can or can't, you're right. Thanks a lot for listening to this. I hope you enjoyed it. And we have all different kinds of episodes on the show in case it's the first time you're listening. Often we have interviews, some of them are quite long. There's a lot of long form stuff, but I also like to mix in these short things too, in case you're short on time and just want to hear a little motivational thing about making music. So if you enjoyed the show, I would love it if you left a review wherever you get your podcasts. That would be awesome. And if you want to dive deeper into my work, head over to brianfunk.com. I've got tutorials, sample packs, Ableton Live packs, downloads, all kinds of stuff for you. And if you really want to get deep in what I do, join the Music Production Club. You get my newest stuff with your membership all the time, as well as a lot of other downloads and links and lots of helpful stuff. We also have live classes and an online community via Discord. That'd be great to have you there. And if you don't need any of that stuff and you just want to help out a little, there's also an option just to make a small donation, kind of like a Patreon. Any help you can give means a lot, even if it's just a review. And I appreciate you just listening. So thanks a lot for taking the time, and I'll see you soon.